The flames painted the night sky orange, casting twisted shadows across Redwood Street as thick smoke billowed from the small ranch house. Marcus Sullivan adjusted his breathing apparatus and charged through the front door with his crew, the heat hitting him like a physical wall. 20 years the force had taught him to move fast and think faster. Inside, the visibility was almost zero. The crackling of burning wood mixed with the distant sound of sirens and shouting neighbors. Marco swept his flashlight beam across the living room, searching for any signs of life. His partner Tommy called out from the kitchen area, but Marco pushed deeper into the house. That's when he heard it, a weak cough coming from what looked like the back bedroom. He navigated around overturned furniture and fallen picture frames, his boots crunching on broken glass. The heat was getting unbearable, even through his protective gear. In the bedroom doorway, Marco's flashlight beam cut through the smoke and landed on a figure pinned beneath a heavy wooden beam that had fallen from the ceiling. The man's oxygen was running out. Marco could see him struggling to breathe. As Marco moved closer, ready to call for backup to help lift the beam, the man's head turned towards the light. Through the haze and soot, their eyes met. Marco's blood went cold. The weathered face, those familiar dark eyes, the scar above the left eyebrow, it was unmistakable. His father. In that moment, the fire was no longer his enemy. It was everything between them, burning. Have you ever had to face someone from your past you weren't ready to see? What would you do if it happened in a life or death moment? If you want to see how Marco confronts the fire and his father, don't forget to subscribe for the full story. 4 hours earlier, Marco had been going through her usual routine at Fire Station 15. He'd arrived at 6 a.m. sharp, same as he had for the past 2 decades. The guys knew better than to expect small talk from Marco Sullivan in the mornings. He was all business, checking equipment, reviewing emergency protocols, and maintaining the trucks. In the equipment room, Marco opened his locker to grab his spare gloves. Inside, among his personal items, sat a photograph face down against the back wall. It had been that way for 12 years. He never looked at it anymore, but he never threw it anyway either. Some things he just learned to live with. The other firefighters respected Marco's quiet nature. He was their most experienced rescue specialist, the guy you wanted with you when things went sideways. But they also knew there were parts of his past he didn't talk about. Everyone had their ghosts. Marco had grown up in the same town, back when his father was still around, before drinking got worse, before the fights that shook the walls, before that final night when his old man walked out and never came back, leaving Marco's mom to raise the kids alone. Marco was 16 then. He'd sworn he'd never end up like his father, and he hadn't. He dedicated his life to saving people instead of abandoning them. The morning shift was winding down, quiet except for the hum of the overhead lights and the hiss of the coffee machine. Marco was tightening a coupling on one of the hoses, the kind of maintenance test he'd done 1,000 times. When the station doors rattled with a sudden gust of wind, he glanced up at the sound, feeling that old tug in his gut, the sixth sense that years on the job had given him. Then, the alarm bells shattered the silence. The loudspeaker crackled to life. The dispatcher's voice clipped and urgent. Engine 15, Truck 15, respond to the structure fire. 412 Redwood Street. Multiple reports of a person trapped inside. Redwood Street. The name hit him like a hammer. He hadn't thought about that neighborhood in years. Not since his boyhood. Not since him. Marco's hands moved automatically, securing his gear, but his mind buzzed with static. Just another call, he told himself. Just another chance to bring someone home safe. But deep down, he knew better. This wasn't going to be just another fire. The house at 410 Redwood Street looked less like a home and more like a giant torch when Marco's truck screeched to a stop. Flames clawed their way up the siding, spitting sparks into the night sky. Neighbors clustered on the curb, in robes and slippers, their faces twisted in helpless horror. Some pointed at the windows where fiery light pulsed like the heart of a beast trapped inside. An elderly woman, her hair rubbed hastily in curlers, clutched Marco's arm as soon as he stepped down from the rig. "There's someone inside," she cried, her voice rugged. "I swear I saw him at the window 10 minutes ago. Then the smoke, oh God, the smoke swallowed him." Marco didn't answer. He just gave a quick nod, signaling his crew with a sharp flick of his glove. His eyes, however, never left the house. The roofline was already sagging, black edges glowing like lava as the fire ate its way through. They had minutes, maybe less, before this place became a tomb. "Tommy, you're with me," Marco barked. "Jenkins, get that line on the roof. Buy us as much time as you can." Every second counted. Every choice carried weight. The moment Marco shoved open the door, the heat hit like a wall. It was the kind of heat that didn't just burn your skin, it pressed into your bones, trying to melt you from the inside out. Smoke filled his mask, a dense gray that swallowed light and blurred edges. Even Tommy, only an arm's length away, was little more than a silhouette. Still, they pushed forward, flashlights slicing the black haze. Marco's beam caught fragments of a life interrupted. A coffee cup abandoned on an end table, reading glasses folded neatly on yesterday's newspaper, and a pair of worn slippers played on the rug as if someone had just stepped out of them. It was a haunting glimpse of a normal life colliding with catastrophe. Somewhere deep in Marco's chest, something stirred. The house smelled faintly of burnt wood and something else, something familiar. His brain wanted to tug the thread, to trace memory, but he forced himself back into focus. He knew this layout: ranch style, narrow hall, 3 bedrooms, and kitchen to the left. If someone were alive, they'd be back where the smoke pulled thickest. They moved deeper. The floorboards groaned under their boots. Marco's breath rattled loudly inside the mask. Every inhale a reminder that his oxygen was burning away too fast. Then, his light swept across the wall. Family photos, their frames warped and blackened, hung crooked on the blaster. One had fallen face down on the floor, glass shattered like ice. Marco bent down, flipped it with his gloved hand. Through the suit, he caught the outline of a young boy in a little league uniform, grinning in the sun, his stomach clenched hard. Not now. He shoved the memory aside. This was no time for ghosts. "Marco," Tommy's voice blasted through the radio. "Structure's unstable. Captain says 5 minutes max before collapse." But just then, a sound pierced through the roar of the fire. A cough, weak, fragile, coming from the back bedroom. Marco froze. Protocol screamed at him. Pull back, regroup, wait for safer entry. But instinct, the thing honed by decades of rescues, told him something else. That cough was a heartbeat against the silence of death, and heartbeats didn't wait. "I'm going in," Marco said. "Give me 3 minutes." "Marco, are you insane?" Tommy shouted. "We're out of time." But Marco was already moving, barreling down the hallway. The heat tightened around him like a vise. His low air arm began to chirp, mocking him with every shield. His knees threatened to buckle as sweat rolled in rivers beneath his suit. "Firefighter here. Is anyone in there?" he bellowed, voice raw and bouncing off the walls. For a moment, only the roar of flames answered. Then, a faint, barely audible groan. Marco froze, straining to listen. "Hello? Can you hear me?" Another weak gasp. His pulse quickened. "I've got you. Hold on." He pushed forward, every step an effort, until through the thick smoke and flickering orange light, then he saw him, a figure, pinned under a fallen beam in the back bedroom. The flames danced around the edges of the bed frame, gnawing their way closer. The man was conscious but fading, his breath ragged and shallow. Marco rushed forward, bracing to lift the beam, until the man turned his head, and Marco's world split open. The face beneath the suit and ash was older, battered by time. But the eyes, those eyes, he knew them, the sharpness in them, the disappointment etched deep. It was a face he had buried in memory, only to have it claw its way back now. His father, Frank Sullivan, the man who'd raised him on liquor and rage, the man whose words had been fist sharper than knuckles, who walked out one night and never came back. Marco had been 16, standing in the doorway, as his mother cried in the kitchen, swearing to himself he'd never be like that man, that he'd never save him. Now here he was, trapped in fire, staring up at his son with recognition, and something Marco had never seen in those eyes before: hope. Marco's lungs seized. He couldn't move, couldn't breathe. For a second, the boy he used to be rose inside, the 16-year-old who swore never to look back, who promised he'd never save this man from himself. He almost turned away. Then his father's lip parted. His voice came out broken, threadbare. "Marco, is that really you?" The sound cut him to the bone. Above them, the beam groaned, raining sparks across the floor. The ceiling sagged another inch. They were seconds away from being crushed alive. Marco snapped back. Training took over. He pressed his hands against the smoking wood, calculating leverage, scanning for anything he could use. But inside, his chest warred with fire of his own, rage, hurt, a lifetime of scars. "You left us," Marco hissed inside his mask. "You walked out. You don't get to." His radio crackled. Tommy again, panicked now. "Marco, get out. The back section's coming down, now." Through the cracked window, Marco caught a flash of red and blue. Reinforcements arriving too late. The smoke thickened, stealing the last of his air. "I'm here," he whispered into his radio. Voice died. "I'm still here." His eyes snapped to his father, who was slumped and wheezing, his eyelids fluttering shut. Marco clenched his jaw, feeling the weight of his oath to save, not to judge. "And I'm getting you out," he said, determination cutting through the smoke and chaos. The house groaned like a dying animal. Flames surged up the curtains. Marco braced himself, ignoring the alarm shrieked in his ear, ignoring the voice in his head that said run. There was no running. Only one choice left. He would free his father or burn beside him. Marco dropped to his knees, fingers brushing against the scorching wood. This isn't normal. Nothing about tonight is normal. His heart pounded as adrenaline surged through every muscle. "Marco, you should go." Frank's voice rasped, weak and ragged, barely audible over the roar of the fire. "Leave me. It's what I deserve." "Shut up," Marco snapped, the words tasting like smoke and anger. "Not tonight." All the years of bitterness, all the pain of abandonment, welled to the surface. "Don't you dare make this about you feeling sorry for yourself." He yanked at the Halligan bar from his belt and jammed it under the beam near his father's chest. The metal slipped, clattering against the floor. Seconds ticked away, each one a hammer striking his nerves. "Marco!" Frank gasped, reaching for his son. I was a coward. I ran when things got hard. But you became everything I never was. You saved people." Marco tightened his jaw, repositioning the bar. "Stop talking. Save your breath." The floor beneath them groaned ominously. Smoke swirled in thick ribbons around his head. The fire's orange glare intensified, crawling up the walls like a living thing. "I need to say this," his father insisted, voice trembling. "I heard you, your mother, but you—" "Not tonight," Marco interrupted, muscles straining against the bar, sweat boiled inside his mask, hot and suffocating. "Tonight, you're someone who needs help, and I don't leave people behind." The Halligan bar shifted slightly, just slightly. Marco wedged a piece of broken furniture under it, leveraging every ounce of strength he had. Pain flared in his back, screaming, but he ignored it. "Focus, move, save him." "Almost got you," he muttered, teeth gritted. He pressed with every ounce of strength, pushing against the beam while inching Frank backward, away from the crushing weight. Dust and plaster rained down, stinging his skin and clogging his lungs. A sharp crack echoed overhead. The ceiling trembled, but Marco held his ground. His eyes locked on his father. Inch by inch, he freed Frank's torso, then his legs. Finally, with the surge fueled by fear and rage, he lifted his father completely out from under the beam. The ceiling chose that moment to give way. Marco threw himself over Frank, shielding him as chunks of plaster and wood slapped around them. A jagged piece struck his helmet, rattling his teeth. Through the ringing in his ears, he heard Tommy shouting from deeper in the house. "Can you move?" Marco asked, voice strained. "My leg can't." Frank groaned, sharp pain radiating from his lower body. Without hesitation, Marco hoisted his father onto his shoulders in a fireman's carry, every muscle screaming, and started towards safety. Each step across the burning floor felt like walking on a trap. Flames licked the hallway as the boards groaned beneath them. Halfway through the living room, Marco spotted a weakened section and took a running leap. His father still slumped across his shoulders. Time slowed. Orange flames framed his father's terrified eyes. The beam above groaned its last warning, and the fire's roar pressed against his eardrums. They landed, safe for now. Smoke stung his eyes, lungs burning, but his father was breathing conscious. That was all that mattered. "Tommy!" Marco shouted, his voice hoarse, adrenaline sharpening every nerve. "I need help." "Here, this way," came the reply, closer than he expected. Through the thick smoke, Marco spotted Tommy and two Engine 12 firefighters cutting a path through the front door. Hose lines sprayed arcs of water, hissing as they met the fire, but the roof above groaned ominously. One wrong step and it would collapse. "Got a victim," Marco called, his voice trembling with strain. "Broken leg, possible smoke inhalation." Jenkins stepped forward, ready to help, but Marco waved him off. "I've got him. Clear the path." Every step was agony. His back screamed, his legs quivered, and his father's weight felt heavier with each labored breath. The hallway stretched endlessly, a gauntlet of fire, smoke, and cracking timber. "Almost there, Dad," Marco whispered, not fully realizing he'd said it aloud. A beam above them creaked and snapped. Marco froze for a heartbeat. "Don't fall. Don't let it fall." He lunged forward, carrying his father over the collapsing section of floor. Dust and sparks rained down around them. Finally, the front door loomed ahead. Marco searched the last few feet, muscles burning, lungs gasping, and they tumbled onto the lawn just as the roof gave way entirely. Behind them, the house surrendered to flames in a thunderous roar. Paramedics swarmed immediately. Marco waved them towards his father, but one paramedic blocked him. "You're not going anywhere, Marco," he said firmly, shining a penlight in his eyes. Smoke inhalation, back strain, and shock. Marco's gaze drifted to his father. Frank was alert, suit streaked, answering questions with clipped breaths. 26 years of silence ended not with words but with survival. Neighbors had gathered safely at a distance. Snippets of murmured awe reached him. That's his son. Carried him out himself. Captain Rodriguez appeared at his side. Hell of a thing, Sullivan. This one's going to stay with me. Marco nodded, throat raw, words failing him. He looked at Frank, a man who had caused him so much pain, left a 16-year-old to fend for himself. And yet now, nothing else mattered. You came back, Frank whispered, eyes glistening. Even for me, even after everything. Marco exhaled sharply, muscles trembling. The oath I took, the promise to protect and serve, this is what it meant. It's what we do, he said, voice rough with smoke and emotion. We don't leave anyone behind. Frank's eyes filled with tears. I left you behind. Yeah, Marco said simply, letting the honesty hang in the air like smoke. Painful, but strangely cleansing. As paramedics prepared Frank for transport, Marco made a choice. Despite the pain, exhaustion, and pounding adrenaline, he stepped forward. Where are you taking him? He said. Oakwood General Hospital. X-rays for the leg. Observation for smoke inhalation. Marco glanced at his father. Wariness and hope mixing in those tired eyes. 26 years of silence stretched between them. Yet sometimes, the most important journeys are the silent ones. Mind if I ride along? Marco asked. Frank nodded, unable to speak. Marco climbed into the ambulance, ignoring the ache in his body and the surprised stares from his crew. As the doors closed and the ambulance pulled away from the burning house, Marco realized that saving someone sometimes meant more than pulling them from the fire. Sometimes, it meant walking back into the flames of your own past, carrying not just their weight, but the weight of years between you. Marco's boots crunched on the sidewalk outside Oakwood General Hospital, the crisp evening air carrying the faint smell of smoke from the fire still smoldering in his mind. A small crowd lingered near the hospital entrance, whispering, pointing, some snapping photos with phones. Headlines in the local papers had already declared him a hero. Local firefighter rescues estranged father from the house fire. Marco ignored them, though it wasn't easy. He'd always been private, and having strangers dissect his family history in grocery store lines and coffee shops left him uncomfortable. Captain Rodriguez's voice echoed in his mind. People need to see heroes aren't just in movies. They're right here, in their communities, making hard choices every day. Each evening after his shift, Marco visited his father. Their conversation started with cautious topics: Frank's recovery, the insurance claim on the house, and where he might live once released. Words were measured, tentative, but slowly, like sparks catching in dry wood. They edged towards the harder truths. I know it doesn't fix anything, Frank admitted one night, his voice low. But leaving you kids, it was the hardest thing I ever did. I thought I was protecting you from the mess I'd become. Marco nodded, sipping coffee he hadn't tasted in weeks, letting the weight of that confession settle without rushing. Forgiveness didn't come all at once, it never did. But each night, they chirped away at years of silence. The real change came in small, almost imperceptible moments. Frank mentioned he'd been sober for 8 years, asking after Marco's mother genuinely, pulling out a worn newspaper clipping of Marco being commended for saving a family from a car accident years ago. I kept track, Frank admitted quietly, not enough to interfere, but enough to know my son became a good man despite having a lousy father. 3 weeks later, Marco sat in the station break room, nursing a cup of coffee, when rookie Danny Reeves slid into the seat across from him. Hey Marco, Danny began, hesitating. Can I ask something personal? Marco lifted his gaze. Shoot. Danny swallowed. That fire a few weeks back with your dad, was it worth it? Risking your life for someone who... He trailed off, unsure if he'd crossed a line. Marco paused, letting the silence hang like smoke in the air. 20 years of firefighting had taught him many things, but this question was different. Worth it? The easy answer, yes. Every life is worth saving, but the deeper truth... You know what I've learned in 20 years? Marco said. Finally, voice steady. Fires burn down houses, but bitterness burns down lives. You can rebuild one of them. Danny nodded, processing. I'm not saying everything's perfect between my dad and me. Years of hurt remain, but that night I had a choice. Let the past decide who lived or died, or do my job. I chose to do my job. Marco glanced at the wall, at photos of the crews during rescues, community events, moments frozen in time. Each frame reminded him of lives touched, risks taken, and choices made. The thing about being a firefighter, he continued, eyes softening, is you learn there are all kinds of fires. Some burn buildings, some burn bridges, and some burn inside people for years. Her wisdom isn't always running into flames. Sometimes it's running towards the people you thought you'd lost forever. Danny was quiet for a moment, letting the words sink in. Then he asked, so, what happens now? Marco smiled, a slow, genuine smile that hadn't appeared in weeks. Now we rebuild. And as he rose from his chair, letting the weight of the past lift a little with each step, he thought, everyday heroes are all around us.